What if the very moment you choose to pray could change everything? Not the words, not the devotion, but the time itself. Imagine discovering an hour when Mary's heart is most open, when heaven seems to lean closer, and your prayers are met not with silence, but with presence. It's August, the month the Church dedicates to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, a sacred season when her nearness feels softer, warmer, more tender than ever. Yet, have you ever prayed the Rosary and felt nothing? Just lips moving, beads slipping through your fingers, but no warmth, no connection. Could it be that the problem isn't how you're praying, but when? Father Vincent Lampert, a seasoned Catholic exorcist with decades of spiritual battles behind him, has seen it again and again, devout souls praying faithfully, yet feeling spiritually dry, until they stumble upon one hidden truth, a sacred hour he calls the threshold, a time when Mary's heart opens wide and heaven bends low to listen. This month, she is nearer than you think, and if your heart has been longing, aching to feel her presence, you'll want to know when she comes closest. Don't look away. Stay until the end, because what Father Lampert reveals might be the missing piece your prayer life has been searching for all along. Before we begin, take a moment to comment. Blessed Mother, draw me into your sacred hour. That comment is more than just words. It's a prayer. A seed of grace that could stir hope in someone else silently searching. Last August, Carol, a 62-year-old parishioner from the Diocese of Peoria, Illinois, stepped into the confessional carrying a quiet sadness. She had prayed the Rosary daily for decades, but lately her devotion felt hollow, like calling into an empty room where no one answers. That same month, this very month, the Church sets aside for Mary's Immaculate Heart. Father Lampert asked her a question few think to ask. When do you usually pray the Rosary? Carol hesitated, then admitted, honestly, whenever I can. In the car, before bed, sometimes while cooking. Instead of telling her to pray more, he invited her into something ancient, something the saints seemed to know instinctively. Praying during heaven's hour. Carol chose dusk, and just 3 weeks later, everything changed. Through tears, she told her priest, that night, I didn't just say the Rosary, I felt her listening. This August, the invitation is the same. The hour may be hidden, but Mary still waits. And those who find her sacred hour often find far more than peace, they find presence. This isn't superstition. It's divine timing. Some dismiss the idea of a sacred hour as if God only listens at certain moments. But the Church teaches something far richer. In paragraph 2698 of the Catechism, Catholics are encouraged to pray at set times because the tradition of Christian prayer has always honored regular hours that nourish continual prayer. Father Lampert puts it plainly, the devil doesn't fear vague intentions, he fears rhythm, and heaven responds to rhythm too. For centuries, monks, mystics, and saints have treasured these hours of grace moments when the heart opens wide and heaven draws near. It's not about earning God's love. It's about aligning your soul with the rhythm of eternity. Just as the ocean has tides, grace has its own timings. The Church knew this long before clocks were ever invented. That's why the Rosary, powerful at any hour, becomes something deeper when prayed in stillness, when the world quiets and the soul listens. According to Father Lampert, that's when Mary comes closest, not as a distant vision, but as a mother stepping quietly into the room when the house has finally grown still. Fatima was no random moment. Earlier, we saw how Mary chooses her moments not by chance, but with the precision of heaven's own rhythm. and history bears witness to this truth. At Fatima, the Virgin Mary did not appear in the middle of the night, nor in fleeting dreams. She came at noon, precisely at 12 o'clock p.m. on the 13th day of each month from May to October 1917. In Lourdes, she appeared at dawn as Bernadette gathered firewood in the quiet embrace of morning. At La Salette, she came in the gentle hours of the afternoon, while two children rested among the green hills of France. These were not mystical coincidences. They were quiet invitations, moments when the day itself slowed, when the noise of the world softened, and heaven's voice could be heard. Father Vincent Lampert often reminds the faithful that spiritual realities are ordered, never random. As he once said, "The demonic is drawn to chaos, grace is drawn to order, and that includes time." For centuries, the Church has lived by this truth through the liturgy of the hours, marking each day with sacred rhythms of prayer. It is no wonder, then, that Mary, the most perfect disciple, chooses to step into these set-apart moments. She does not come to disrupt. She comes when hearts are most ready to receive. Fatima was never about spectacle, it was about precision. A divine appointment scheduled on heaven's calendar, not ours. And those same hours? They are still open, still sacred. The question is not only how we pray, but when. Heaven is most tender when earth is most still at dawn, when the pale sky has yet to fully awaken and the world has not begun to speak. Or again at dusk, when the sun sinks low and the shadows soften the earth. There is a kind of quiet the soul recognizes, even when the body is unaware. Father Lampert has witnessed it countless times. It's not merely a matter of choosing a time to pray. It's about entering the moment when we are finally still enough to notice who is already there. Heaven never needs to shout. Grace whispers. And Mary, in her gentle and maternal way, chooses the hours when our defenses are down, when we are most open. That is why so many saints and mystics prayed before sunrise or after sundown. They weren't chasing silence for its own sake. They were seeking the tenderness that silence makes possible. In confessions and spiritual direction, Father Lampert has seen lives transformed, not because people prayed more, but because they prayed differently, choosing to pray the Rosary quietly in these still hours. Because when earth grows silent, heaven speaks loudest. Margaret, a 71-year-old from the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, had prayed the Rosary faithfully for most of her adult life. But last fall, after a gentle conversation during spiritual direction, she began praying each evening at exactly 6:30 p.m. Just as the sun slipped behind the trees in her backyard. It wasn't a dramatic change. She expected nothing unusual, yet something shifted. One evening, as the Hail Marys rolled softly from her lips, she paused, not from distraction, but because she sensed something different. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was the presence of someone. She later described it as a silence that felt alive, as though someone was there, listening, holding, simply being. No sound, no vision, no voice. Yet tears welled in her eyes without warning. The next night, she returned to that hour. And then again, and again. Father Lampert, reflecting on Margaret's experience, said, "Mary doesn't always speak. Sometimes she simply arrives. And when she does, the soul knows even if the mind can't explain it. These moments cannot be forced. They are not the fruit of effort, but of availability. When the soul stops rushing and becomes still, the Rosary prayed in the hour, Mary prefers ceases to feel like a mere recitation. It becomes something far more intimate, a meeting place. Prayer is always good, but not all hours are the same. And the early church understood this well. The early church knew this secret well, and so did the saints. They didn't simply pray, they ordered their lives around the moments when heaven seemed to open widest. Monastics shaped their entire days around it. Even the Psalms echo this rhythm. In the morning you hear my voice, O Lord. Father Vincent Lampert often reminds the faithful that grace doesn't bend to our convenience. It flows where there is room. And some hours, more than others, create that space. At 9:00 a.m., the world is in full motion, minds racing, schedules pulling us in every direction. But at 9:00 p.m., or in those precious minutes before dawn, the world slows. The air feels different. The soul begins to breathe in a deeper way. It's why saints like John of the Cross could write, "In the silence of the night, the beloved comes more freely." The Rosary itself does not change, but what surrounds it does. Stillness, darkness, a heart free from the constant tug of distraction. In the morning we may speak to God, but in the quiet hours, we are far more likely to hear Him speak back. That is when the Rosary becomes more than prayer. It becomes a threshold, a crossing from noise into peace, from routine into encounter. Father Lampert has witnessed it often. The same Rosary prayed at different hours produces different fruit. When the heart is open and the hour is holy, Mary comes not only to listen, but to remain. And that, he says, is precisely why Satan hates the Rosary, but fears its timing even more. In his ministry as an exorcist, Father Lampert has seen firsthand how the enemy reacts to holy things. The devil hates the Rosary, he once explained, but when it's prayed in sacred silence at heaven's chosen hour, he flees even faster. Evil thrives in noise, in distraction, in hurry. But grace and Mary's presence arrive in stillness, discipline, and holy order. Spiritual warfare, then, is not about shouting prayers louder. It's about praying with intention and in God's time. The enemy is not concerned when our prayers are rushed, distracted, or irregular. But when we pray deeply, with rhythm, and especially when we show up at the same sacred hour Mary does, that is when he trembles. Over the years, Father Lampert has counseled many who found little fruit in their prayer life until they changed when they prayed. It is not superstition, it is spiritual strategy. The enemy studies our weaknesses, but he also fears our holy habits, especially those grounded in rhythm and reverence. And there is no rhythm hell dreads more than a faithful Rosary, whispered in a quiet room during heaven's hour. The saints never guessed when to pray. They lived by sacred rhythm. Saint Benedict shaped monastic life around 8 fixed hours of daily prayer, not to burden his monks, but to meet grace where it already flows. Saint Teresa of Avila once said, "There is a time for God to speak, and a time for us to simply wait." Grace doesn't always arrive with a shout. It moves like morning light spilling through a still window. Father Lampert often shares this with those under spiritual attack. You don't fight darkness with panic. You fight it with a pattern. That's what the saints did, and that's what Mary teaches us. When the Rosary becomes a rhythm prayed in the same sacred place, at the same holy hour, the soul is shaped by more than the words. It begins to live in expectation. And that quiet, steady, humble expectation often becomes the very space where Mary arrives. The saints didn't just love prayer, they loved the hour they met God. Many believed that when you choose a sacred time and guard it, heaven begins to choose that time too. There may be no universal, perfect hour, but there is your hour, the moment when your soul is most still, most open, most reachable, and perhaps the holiest work we can do is to find it. Finding your hour is not about matching someone else's schedule. It's about discovering the quiet space where heaven feels closest, and your heart is most ready to notice. For Mary Jacobs, a 68-year-old widow from North Carolina, that hour is 5:00 a.m., when her home is completely still, and the first rays of sunrise spill softly across her kitchen window. For Carla, a young single mother in Phoenix, it's 8:30 p.m. When the children are asleep, the dishes are done, and her hands finally stop moving. For Daniel, a retired truck driver battling insomnia, it's 2:00 a.m. when he steps outside into the cool night air and sees stars no one else is awake to witness. Father Vincent Lampert offers this simple counsel for those searching for their sacred hour. It's not about when you're free. It's about when heaven is closest and when you are finally still enough to notice. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait until you feel holy or ready. Just choose a time. Try it for 1 week. Show up not to perform, not to impress, but to listen. Mary is not waiting for perfect prayers. She is waiting for presence. And when you begin to honor the same hour each day, even with your weakness, even in silence, and that hour becomes holy. Every deep relationship is built on consistency. Prayer is no different. Tom, a 74-year-old from the Archdiocese of Kansas City, had lost his wife and much of his strength. He didn't pray to feel better. He simply kept showing up at 7:00 p.m. every night, rosary in hand, sitting in his recliner by the window. For months, nothing seemed to happen. Then one evening, as he held the crucifix and whispered the sorrowful mysteries, something in the air shifted. He didn't hear a voice. He didn't see a vision. But he said it felt as if someone sat beside him, not to speak, but simply to stay. Reflecting on moments like these, Father Lampert says, "Spiritual breakthrough rarely comes to those who pray once. It comes to those who keep showing up, even in silence. Grace comes quietly. Mary comes gently. But they come. The sacred hour you choose becomes a meeting place, not because you command it, but because you return to it. Holiness is not built on fleeting emotion, but on faithful return, again and again, until heaven responds with presence. The Rosary is powerful at any time, but when it is prayed in her hour, the hour heaven seems to prefer, something shifts. You may not see visions. You may not feel sudden warmth. But Mary will come, because she is a mother, and mothers show up when their children do. Father Lampert reminds us, Mary doesn't need noise. She needs trust and time. Choose 1 hour, guard it, return to it, and watch how everything begins to change, not always in the world around you, but deep within you. The sacred hour is not superstition. It is invitation, an invitation to meet a mother who waits. So perhaps this is your first step. Comment below, Mary, teach me your sacred hour. Let your words be more than a comment. Let them be a prayer, a declaration, a beginning. If something in this spoke to your heart, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs Mary's gentle presence today. And if you wish to journey deeper in faith each day, consider subscribing to Living Catholic Faith for moments that are rare, rooted, and real. May today be the day you find her hour, and may it become the hour you never want to miss again.